Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupé Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol-free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I hope you've had, if you celebrate, good Christmas. We're in that sort of lull before the new year, and everyone's sort of waiting for New Year's Eve, and then all the New Year's resolutions that we're all going to do that then never stick. And I always wonder, why don't we just do things like that throughout the year and revisit maybe on a quarterly basis where we're going and what we want to achieve and what are our goals. And you don't need to wait until New Year, but I know it's the thing to do, like drinking is the thing to do. But yeah, I think if you are heading into the new year, of course, Dry January is a great opportunity to maybe take that break that you've been wanting to take. It's a good time of year, I suppose, because everyone's doing it, so you don't need to find those excuses. But as you know, I fundamentally believe that I think taking a break, however short, is brilliant, and then thinking about the insight that you gain, that's fantastic, and making a note of how you feel and all of that. And I only took a 21-day break, so if you can do a 31-day break in January, then brilliant, go for it. But I'd also think about maybe doing a 90-day break to really see those full benefits. 90 to 100 days, I tend to find that people really then see those benefits that they are looking for and realize that being alcohol free is actually a gift and a superpower. Okay, so I'm really excited to announce my 21-day challenge, which is kicking off in January. And as many of you know, and as I've already mentioned, it was 21 days that then kickstarted my alcohol free journey. And I'm now 3 and a bit years alcohol free. And without those 21 days, I don't think my perception would have ever changed. I think I probably would still be on the same journey. And so I'm really excited to introduce my 21-day challenge. And the aim of it really is to help you to take a break from drinking and really give yourself permission to do that, but also do it in a way that you enjoy it and that you're not feeling like you're depriving yourself, to really get to experience all the things we talk about and get to experience some of the benefits as well of being alcohol free for that time. And hopefully it will help you make an informed decision on what you want to do next and whether you want to continue on the alcohol free journey. So if you would potentially like to wake up with that clear head and having had a fully rested night's sleep, if you'd like to not feel so anxious in the morning, if you would like to not have that foggy head, and if you would just like to feel fully present with your family and not struggle when it comes to wine o'clock that you feel like you need to have a drink, if you want to feel more calm and have more energy, then you'll be able to experience this in the 21-day challenge. And it's a 21-day challenge where I'm doing both a combination of one-to-one and group coaching. So you'll get to experience both of those things. And really, it will give you an understanding of the impact of alcohol and what it does on, day-to-day life, but also help you sort of really beat those cravings, help you navigate those alcohol-free firsts, and get those tools that will allow you to enjoy the experience. So if this is something that you're interested in, I do hope it is, then feel free to sign up, and you can go to my website, thrivealcoholfree.com, and go to the 21-day challenge. But I will leave the details and links in the show notes so that you can have a look and get some further information. I'm really excited for this, and I know it's going to help you. So if it's something that you're interested in, I'm looking forward to meeting you in January. I'm hoping that our guest today will maybe inspire you to at least do Dry January and see where you get to. I'm delighted to have Andy Ramage on the podcast this week. And his story is just so inspiring, and his energy is amazing. And you will no doubt be inspired to at least take a break having listened to this. A bit about Andy. Andy is a former professional footballer who, after injury, created two major financial brokerages. And after taking a break from alcohol, Andy's mind life was transformed. So 10 years later, Andy's widely recognized as one of the world's #1 alcohol-free performance coaches, or as the Happy Pear coined, the Godfather of the alcohol-free movement. Andy co-founded the OneYearNoBeer movement and recently co-created the Dryy app and Dryy Coach online community, which collectively have coached hundreds of thousands of middle lane drinkers to better performance through alcohol-free performance coaching. And as a coach, Andy is in an elite group globally who are trained at master's degree level in coaching psychology and positive psychology, and is currently coaching at all levels from everyday heroes to premiership footballers and CEOs. Andy's main focus is training incredible life and executive coaches on his treble accredited diploma in coaching and positive psychology, and the next wave of alcohol-free coaches on his alcohol-free performance coach certification. And he's also a major shareholder director of Empower Sports Agency, empowering athletes to become the CEO of their talent. And you can train with Andy or contact him at www.andyramage.com. I think it's also interesting how he talks about the different industries and how, regardless of what type of work you do, there is a real drinking culture everywhere in society, and it's just the done thing. And actually being uncommon and taking a break and saying you're not doing what everyone does may seem like a really scary thing, but who knows where it leads you to, and having the courage to take this one step could change everything. So I do hope you enjoy this conversation with Andy, and yeah, here it is. Hi, so welcome, Andy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really lovely to see you.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be at. As mentioned just off air, anything I could do to support the brilliant work you're doing, by the way, which I'm loving at the moment. So good on you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So, I mean, most people will know you. Obviously, everyone knows you as the godfather of the alcohol-free movement, having been around for 10 years. But for those people that don't know you, maybe it'd be worth just giving a bit of an intro as to who you are, how you got here, and what keeps you going.
Yeah, I love that title. It is very nice that a few people have mentioned that. I guess my story begins, let's go right back to the start, and I whiz through it. But at 16, I left school to go and play professional football, which I did for about 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, got injured, and my career and my life shifted really quickly. I fell into the world of broking, the guys in the bright jackets in the trading pits that tend to scream and shout at one another. And I loved it. It was the next best thing that I'd found to sport in many ways. And fast forward 10 years, had created that traditional, I guess, success by the yardstick of monetary and the economics. But I found myself really unfulfilled, unmotivated, 3 stone heavier than I am now. So 42 pounds heavier than I am. Mid-30s, classic sort of reflection point in my life when I just went, oh, this is it. I've sort of achieved what I thought you needed to achieve to be blissfully and internally happy. And I wasn't, actually. I was drinking too much, overweight, unfit, unhealthy, relationships strained, just felt like I was in survival mode. It just didn't, none of it added up. And in part of that reflection, it was like, well, what do? Do I quit this job and go and do something different in my life? And I thought, no, I'm going to stay within this career, which was heavily involved in socializing and alcohol and all those type of things, but I'm going to do something different. And part of that reflection was to take a break from alcohol, which no one had ever done in that industry. Like, that was just unheard of. The only people that ever stopped drinking in our industry were forced to stop drinking, i.e., if you drink again, you might not survive kind of people. There was a few of those dotted around, but no one had ever come to it with a proactive approach. I found it really difficult. Because my whole world was, built around alcohol. It's how I met my best friends, met my wife. It's how I celebrated, commiserated. It's how I socialized, how I did business, how I won new clients. I was that guy. I was the entertainer. If you were coming out with me, you're going to have a great time. And that meant you're going to have a few drinks. I was that person. So to suddenly decide to potentially switch that off in search of peak performance, I guess, I had that little tug that sits in the back of your mind that kept saying, I wonder, is it alcohol that's sort of getting in the way of everything? The anxiety was really starting to hang around, really inconsistent. Again, nutrition all over the place due to stodge, hangover food, exercise, totally inconsistent. Again, for the same reason, tiredness and couldn't quite be bothered to go to the gym. Temperament, inconsistent. Performance in the office, inconsistent. I was sort of in that scratch head moment of, wonder, is it alcohol? But what's even funny about that was the last thing that I ever questioned. It's funny, isn't it? I was literally trying to meditate, too anxious to meditate because I've been drinking too much. I was trying ice baths before they were even a thing. I was doing everything. The last thing I ever thought of was, oh, I wonder, is it alcohol? So it's this sort of epiphany moment of, I wonder if I just remove that for a while, will I get some great results? And I tried to, couldn't do it. Literally, friends, family, colleagues said, you will never even get past a week. You're that guy. You're not the guy that doesn't drink. And of course, through repeated attempts and failed attempts and departing the wagon and all the things that we do, I got really frustrated, but I didn't give up. I got really interested in my brain. And there was a particular moment I remember queuing up at the bar in the local pub where we all used to hang out as brokers. And that day I wasn't drinking. I was on one of my, I'm going alcohol-free periods, but I was only like 6 days into it or something. And I was queuing at the bar and I was having a sparkling water. 100%, I'm having a sparkling water. I was even telling myself in my mind, I'm having a sparkling water. I get to the front of the bar person asked those immortal words, what do you want? And I responded with total confidence, pint of Stella. Pint of Stella. I was like, how did that happen? How does that happen? It was like something had just possessed me. And I just ordered this drink that I didn't want. I told myself I didn't want it. And I really was intrigued by that. I was like, why is that happening? And I was so intrigued. I really started to study psychology in a big way. And that was part of the process. And through that, I sort of figured it out in the end, what was happening inside my mind. I went back, I left school at 16, eventually to do a degree and then a master's degree in positive psychology, coaching psychology, trained as an NLP master practitioner, mindfulness-based awareness coach. I did everything. I wanted to learn why was my brain doing stuff like that? And in doing so, I sort of unlocked, I guess, the alcohol-free code in many ways. And that 6 days eventually became 28, became 90, became 365. And the results that I got in there for me were incredible. I lost the 3 stone in weight, went very quickly. It transformed my nutrition to a more plant-based style, though it's a bit more flexible at the moment. My career took off. I grew it 7 times bigger in half the time, even though everyone said you'd fail. They said, you're going to fail. You can't be a broker and not drink. Who wants a broker that doesn't take them out and entertain them with alcohol? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to have to find out, I guess. My relationships, my beautiful wife, my kids, 1,000 times better. My spark came back. My bounce came back. My energy, my authentic self came back. So beautiful, so powerful. I was like, I've got to share this. I don't know who I'm going to share it with, but I guarantee you there's a lot of people like me that need a bit of support, maybe need a group community that looks a bit different from the traditional, let's just say the old school method. This was above that. It was like prevention. And that really was the spark for, right, let's do something. And that led me on this adventure, basically.
Amazing story. I mean, there's so much there, and there's so much that the person listening can relate to, I'm sure. The whole identity thing, and you were the entertainer, and everyone has this identity. And that's one of the hardest things to shift. When you know that this is you, or you believe this is you, how could you possibly change? That's one thing you have to get over. And I wonder, was that one of the switches that you found through the positive psychology and studying the brain and everything else?
Yeah, and I started to realize that humans are so scared of change.
Yeah.
And it's great to be aware of that. W.H. Auden, English author and poet, wrote, "We would rather die in our dread than change." I just love that. We'd rather die in our dread than change. You see it all the time, don't you? People stay in relationships, people stay in marriages, people stay in careers, people stay in their relationship with alcohol because they're so scared to change anything, because what might be on the other side of change? So we'd rather stay in a really unhealthy relationship, career, or relationship with alcohol because of that fear. So even starting to become aware of that, that spurred me on a little bit, because I thought, I don't want to be held prisoner by this thing. Who knows what's out the other side of this? But genuinely, my big fears were, what will happen to fun time 4 pints Andy? Where's he going to go? Like, is my wife still going to love me? The kids still going to love me? And my number one fear, and I always say this, and it is true, was how the hell am I going to dance at a wedding? That's just impossible. And like middle-aged ginger bloke, I don't even know if that's legal at this stage of the game. How am I going to dance at a wedding? That's impossible. Like, it's just not happening. So those things kept me stuck for quite a long while. And exactly that, it was really hard to re-become my authentic self. I wasn't losing anything, I was gaining something, but that is a really hard process for everyone. And I totally get that. And I think that's why a lot of my messaging is very much always about take a break, just have a little peek what it's like to be really you, what it's like to not have to be that persona, which was a fake persona. Like in my instance, I would be that larger than life character with alcohol, but that's not me in the real world. Yeah. Even though I can entertain and put it on, I can do all that, but I'm really introverted in my authentic state. But I could play the game with alcohol, and I would wake up the following day, and this would happen to me so often, and I'd meet the group that I was with the night before or whatever it looked like, and they'd be like, there's that guy. And they'd almost be like, do your thing. And I sort of couldn't do it. It was like being Superman coming back to Clark Kent going, well, I just want to go home and read my books. I'm not really actually that person. But I never put two and two together. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I sort of just couldn't figure out why I couldn't recreate that thing the day after. And then I realized because that was never me all along. It was just, in my instance, everyone's different, but that was just a fake version of me created through alcohol that wasn't really me. And I think that's that I had the underlying angst all the time of, I'm just not being authentic. And then I was, once alcohol went, shining that light, much quieter, not swinging off the chandeliers anymore, to let other people do that kind of thing. And I just got into my real powerful groove, because it's a powerful groove when you show up as authentically you. People feel it. Can't quite put their finger on it, but they know this is a person that's like in control. They are confident. They're powerful. They don't have to be saying a lot. They don't have to be shouting from the rooftops. There's just like, there's an inner glow to them. And I think that in itself started to really resonate with people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think you're right. It's that a lot of people say it, and myself was included, I thought I was this extrovert and, the party girl and all of that sort of stuff. And actually, I much rather sit in a corner and read a book. And, I am quite introverted. I can put on the extrovert, but I know that that's sort of, it's hard work. Once I've done a bit of extroverting, I'm back to being introverted again. Yeah. So I completely get that. But what I also find interesting that you mentioned was, it was the last thing you ever questioned. And I think a lot of people might think, well, okay, I'm not as healthy as you. Sort of get to your 30s, your mid-30s, your 40s, and you think, well, it's just because I'm getting old. It's a good excuse, isn't it? I'm old, so actually, of course, I'm not going to be as healthy as I'd like to be, or of course, I've got a little bit around my stomach or whatever because I'm getting old, and it's sort of justified. And people don't maybe question the alcohol. And you said it was the last thing that you questioned. So what suddenly, you talked about the fact that you had this nudge and niggle. Did that go on for quite a while? And then when did you respond to it? Because a lot of the time people might have that for years and still not do anything about it.
I think it was the progressive anxiety that was hanging around. Like I was really feeling it the day after and the day after that and the day after that. So I knew something wasn't right in the way that I was responding. It was almost like a temporary depression, I think is probably a really good way to put it. It was like I was getting in a hole each time I would drink, and it would take me a couple of days to get out of that hole, only to wallop myself over the head with a few more drinks and slip all the way back down to the bottom again. So there was that a growing unease with it. This is something's not right with this or the way that I'm feeling. This is meant to be fun. You know, this was my happy-go-lucky place. It felt like in my 20s, and now I'm sort of in my like mid-30s, and actually I don't think it's fun anymore. I don't think I'm actually enjoying it anymore. And I think that's so true. Like if you think about the way the brain works, it builds these habits really quickly. And most of us started drinking in our teens. And if you actually think about that, right, here's a really powerful, highly addictive drug that we all start taking, or many of us did, in our like early teens. I was like 13, 14. Now you can imagine our beautiful young brains just getting lit up by this drug that is alcohol. And then, of course, the brain's not used to being slammed with, you know, drugs such as alcohol. So it jumps to its own conclusions. For example, in my case, ginger kid, wanted to get to know girls, 13, introverted, awkward, couple of drinks, boom, it's like an elixir. I could talk to girls. So in terms of a habit formation, there was the trigger. The trigger was that emotional pain of wanting to talk to girls and being uncomfortable. The routine was to drink alcohol. The reward was I could talk to girls. Like in my young brain, that's one of the greatest gifts ever, right? So it was like, boom, let's make a habit out of that. Emotional pain, routine drink, reward, social ease. That anxiety goes away. But what your brain doesn't do, its habitual system, is hang around. It didn't hang around to see what happened later on, to see the tiredness, the drudgery, the can't be botheredness. And of course, when you're young, you can sort of battle through that a bit more anyway. It's a different thing, isn't it? Whereas fast forward 15, 20 years, and I'm still playing that same routine, even though, you know, I'm happily married and I can converse with anyone. Really, the underlying routine was a bit of social anxiety, which everyone experiences anyway. Oh, my brain's got a routine for that. Drink alcohol, reward, feel a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
But then it didn't hang around. If it had stuck around a bit longer, it would have found out the shame, the regret, the guilt, the drudgery, the can't be arsedness, the weight putting on, the fact that I might wake up the next day anxious, tired, but because it had made its mind up when I was a 13-year-old and wanted to keep playing that habit. So I think a lot of this is that self-discovery of, oh, actually, if you took a blank sheet of paper and said, right, evaluate your relationship with alcohol now, today, it probably looks so much different to when you formed your habit of drinking 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think most people, when you really analyze it, and that's what I did, realized, oh, I'm actually not giving anything up. I'm just gaining this plethora of incredible advantages. Boom. And that was a penny drop moment for me. Then it was almost done at that stage.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And it's amazing to think as well, the brain doesn't fully form until you're sort of 22, 23. I think that's right. You probably know better, but you're doing all of this before it's even fully formed. And most of us drink before that point. And so we are sort of just messing about with all of that, as well as you say, the neuro pathways and everything are just sort of forming there. And that's what you then automatically, it's your automatic go-to, as opposed to really taking that pause or taking that step back to think, is it something I want to do? Because as you said earlier, you asked for a pint of Stella even though you wanted to have sparkling water. So it's fascinating. I want to touch on the industry and being in financial services, because I know a lot of people in that space. And one of the things that when I talk to people in that space is they're really frightened to let it. They might have stopped for like a couple of months, 2 to 3 months, but they're really frightened to bring it up at work because they worry that they might not get the promotion, or they might not be invited to the dinners or the client meetings because they're not drinking, and they get so in their head about it that it stops them. It sort of paralyzes them almost and makes them think, should I carry on drinking because my career might go down the pan, or worse off, I would speak to someone who said they might be fired. I was like, okay, let's be logical about this. They can't fire you for not drinking, but it does play on a lot of people's minds. And so I'm curious as to How did you go about it, and what advice could you give to someone in that sector in particular? Because it is a heavy drinking culture.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that, and I will talk about it in that financial world, but there's so many other industries that are just the same. That was the thing
Yeah,
that surprised me. I thought, oh, it's just my industry. And people went,
yeah,
I'm in construction. It's exactly the same.
yeah.
Teachers, it might not have
Interesting.
that social pressure, but there's a huge drinking culture. It
Yeah,
is in almost, this is the thing about alcohol. It's so ubiquitous. It's that pressure lives. But let's just focus on the financial area, because a lot of business is done over lunches and dinners, and that's,
exactly.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of entertaining as
Mm,
part of what we do. And I was really worried about that. I've got to be honest. And my boss at the time, my hero, my
mm,
mentor, pretty much said to me, look, and this was about 4 weeks in, if you continue this, I think you're finished.
wow.
What client's going to want to go out with a broker that doesn't drink, right? Like, that's
Mm,
sort of what we do. So if
mm.
you want to continue with this, crack on. But I think your career is going to really suffer for it, which is
Gosh.
unbelievable
Yeah.
social pressure. You can imagine. But what actually happened, I was starting to feel so good. I was like, actually, I don't care what you think or what you say.
Mm,
I know this is good for me. I'm going to run with this and see what happens. And as that momentum built and I got consistent, I was so much better at my job, so much better. I was making the phone calls that I wouldn't normally make if I was a bit jaded and a bit anxious. And all of a sudden, I'm scared of the phone, almost scared of my own shadow kind of thing. So I was more consistent. I was making more calls. So I started to do more business. And then I started to impress clients in different ways, i.e., by my consistency and
mhm.
being really good at what I actually did. And then what I realized is that actually, in a world that was awash with booze, I was the only broker that didn't drink. So everyone got to know me really quickly as the guy that didn't drink, which was amazing, right? And think about this. My persona up to that point was the larger than life drinking character very much.
Mm,
And then I thought, I'm never going to shake that. Everyone's going to think that I was that guy. I
yeah.
reckon within 6 months, I'd gone from being, the larger than life drinking character to this sort of health guy that didn't drink. So I just started to adapt a little bit. We'd do yoga retreats, surfing camps with our clients, Barry's boot camps with our clients,
Mm,
just a completely different approach. And it was fresh and original because, do you know what? Here's the secret. Many of our clients, they didn't want to drink either. And they welcomed someone who was courageous enough to go, oh, I'm not drinking. It gave them a license not to drink.
yeah.
So it was a beautiful thing. So I always say to people, in those situations, how do you know until you try? How do you not know that, one, you're going to be so much better at your job? You're going to feel incredible. You're going to have more time, more energy, be more consistent. You're going to look so much better, feel so much better.
Mm,
And there's nothing to say that it won't be the best thing you ever did, because you might find some clients, actually, they don't want to drink. And you might find that your work is so impressive through your consistency, and you've got to think outside the box. It's easy to say, meet me for a drink. It takes a bit more planning to say, come and join me on this event, or let's get up early and do a spin class. Like, who does that? But
yeah.
why not? So that's my advice. I think it could be your greatest power. That's the way I approach it in the corporate world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. I think it is doing something different. And I'd also say the younger generation don't want to drink as much anyway. And so a lot of the team meetings and other things, people have got, probably 4 or 5 years ago, people were getting bored of the whole let's just go for a drink. It was let's do something else that then is more socially inclusive as well. So let's do chocolate making and things like that. Let's go bowling. I think you're right. There are lots of other things that you can do. And I love what you were talking about in terms of the spin class and the going on a surfing retreat and all of that, because people do just think it's all about drinking. And because it's so ingrained in our society, it just feels like that's the norm. But there are other things to do,
Yeah.
there are other ways to live. So
I think
yeah.
it's all I always say, and I really don't like this word, and I use it because it's a charged word for me anyway. I think it's just lazy. It's a lazy way to connect. It's a lazy way in the business world to
Yeah.
social. I'll just go for a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
Everyone does that. And that was always my take on it. If you make the extra effort
Yeah.
because you don't want to go for just a couple of drinks to arrange, the spin class, the boot camp, whatever that looks like, I think that starts to set you apart. That's some of the secret to it, I think.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. The question I have for you, Andy, was did you dance alcohol free?
I did. I threw some shapes. It was not pretty. It's still not pretty. I can sort of do it. I always like describe it. It's a bit like a magnet on a fridge. That's what I'm sort of like a little bit. sort of scooping along. But yeah, I've thrown some shapes, sober
Love it.
shapes in my time.
Love it. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so maybe, it's interesting you talked about being unfulfilled and not really knowing where you were going, and that was one of the reasons that you thought maybe it's the alcohol. Well, fast forward 10 years, and I would say you're certainly living in your purpose and you're fully fulfilled. And so I would love to talk about what you're doing now and the change that you've made and to so many lives over the
Yeah.
past 10 years from making that decision, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And I wrote a little email about it in the week that I was doing some training at the weekend, training our coaches. I'll get onto that. But Tara, my wife, walked in. I'm at home at the moment and saw me all like kitted up, ready to go, and sort of had that really nice reflection. I'm really happy for you, was what she said. She said, I'm really happy for you. What was that? She went, you're just getting to do what you love, which is pretty blooming cool, isn't it?
That's
To
amazing.
be able to do what you love from home with the people that I love, helping people, adding value to this short and precious life of ours. Whereas my career before, even though it was brilliant for the economics, it absolutely was, it just didn't nourish my soul, as it were.
Yeah.
So now to be in a place some 10 years later where actually I own businesses, I invest in businesses, I help train and inspire lots of people to go out in the world and make change, as well as doing it myself. Yeah, I feel pretty cool. And I'm only just warming up. That's the truth of it. I really feel like we're just getting going. This is the start of the whole adventure. So yeah, it's been really exciting. And to come back to that, I guess what happened was that in that origins of being inspired, it led me down the world of entrepreneurship in many ways, because we started a movement called OneYearNoBeer. We self-funded that for the first 2 years to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds each, and realized it was all free because we were well-paid brokers. That was our plan. And then realized that free was unbelievably expensive for us. It almost broke my personal bank, as it were.
Yeah.
We were totally maxed out. It was almost broken. We're going to have to turn the lights off. We just couldn't do it anymore, even though we'd already inspired so many people. It was such a shame. And it was one of those light bulb moments of, oh, I wonder if we could turn this into a course that people might actually invest in to train with us. Then I switched it on, and as if by magic, people started purchasing these courses. And it was like, oh, right, maybe there's a really skillful way to do this, because if we don't do it skillfully, we're out. And all the people that we've helped, we won't be able to help anymore. We've just got to go back to the day jobs. So actually that forced me into the world of entrepreneurship to figure out, right, how can you do good in the world and also make it economical so you can help as many people as possible, and then fund yourself to help as many people as possible and give people a wonderful service for something and make it economical. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And, you look at many of the things that I do, such as the Dryy app, which is really important to me. The Dryy app actually is not a fair description. It's an alcohol-free community training platform that we love. That's free. And it's incredibly, that it's a daily live content goes into that app, which is free to everyone. So there's no barrier to entry. And there's courses within that. Again, this is that sort of, I guess, skillful learning over time, that there's no barrier to entry. You can help as many people as possible, but then equally, if people want more, then there is something they can purchase which helps fund the whole operation so that we can reach more people. So I've spent a lot of time doing that, and a big part of that evolved into training coaches. So it's a huge part of what I do now, and I absolutely love it. It's what I do most of. So that's training coaches in coaching and positive psychology, because I have a background in positive psychology with a specialism bolted onto that of alcohol-free coaching. Because what I've found is so many people come into this space and they want to give back. They want to, there's a tug to something more. That's exactly what I felt. And I trained 2 years before I went alcohol-free as a coach. That's what most people don't know.
Yeah.
I started that process, and it was that learning to help others. Really, I was my best client for the first 3 years. I just took all the learning and worked on myself, and that was part of going alcohol-free. So that's what I really like to do now. I like to give people that wonderful experience, because really it's a wonderful self-development course in itself, but also so they come out the other side with this really robust treble accredited skill that they could go into the corporate world should they wish, at literally investment bank level, or they might want to use their specialism in alcohol-free to start a podcast or start an app. And the great example of that, the Dryy app was born out of that training. So I trained Matt Pink, a Better Life guy, as a coach. He came up with that idea, presented it back to me, and ta-da, Dryy was born. So that's predominantly what I do now. Really, what I've realized is I'm only one person and I could only reach a certain amount of people, albeit I've been very fortunate that's reached lots of people. But in my mind, I'm like, well, if I can train 100 people to sort of do something what I do, and they're all different to me.
Yeah.
So they're all appealing to different niches and different groups and different approaches. Wouldn't that be something to the power of 100? What about to the power of 200, power of 1,000? Imagine I vicariously, selfishly as well, I celebrate everyone's joys. That's why you'll see me out there. I champion all our coaches all the time. I try and promote them all the time because I'm like, imagine if they go and do their thing and they help one person or they help 100. Yeah. I'm vicariously taking, like, that's me. I'm a part of that. So yeah, I get such a good buzz out of it. So that's basically what I predominantly do at the moment, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to sort of do coaching with you, what's the best way to get in touch and do that?
The best thing to do, if you go to my website, which is andyramage.com, there's loads of free resources on there, free resources about going alcohol-free, self-development, but there's also one on there for coaches. It's a free introduction to coaching. That's a great place to start. Or my main site is aratewaycoach.com. But also I train existing coaches in alcohol-free coaching. Lots of people have already qualified as coaches through different organizations, but they still want that specialism of alcohol-free coaching. So if there's anyone listening who's already a coach, come and do that with me. Again, same place, go to andyramage.com. Is the best sort of launch pad for all of that stuff.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. And I mean, how amazing. I imagine you never thought 10 years ago that all of this would have happened and that you'd be where you are today because you decided to ditch this one thing.
It's just, I think it's the biggest gift. And I say this to everyone. I genuinely believe it's a gift. And the reason I think it's a gift, because I think too many people in the modern world are just sort of stuck in malaise of just middlingness. Nothing's going too badly wrong in their life. So they're just sort of ticking along. But actually, all the literature, you know, the ages of the ages and the sages of the sages, as I like to say, tell us the same thing. You need to fall before you rise. You know, it was a lucky storm that blew the house down. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people in the alcohol-free space. It's the greatest gift they was ever given because it shakes us out of that just malaise of just middlingness. And suddenly, boom, we're awake because it's like, oh, I'm finding this thing a little bit difficult. It might, you know, equally, it could be a redundancy, a divorce, something that shakes us at our core to really reflect and think, actually, am I on the right path? Is there more to this short and precious life than what I thought there was? And for me, that's exactly what alcohol did. It just woke me up. That's all it did. It just woke me up to life. I could have easily stayed what I was doing, generated lots of money and had all that stuff and been completely unfulfilled. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I'm in it. It's way harder. Don't get me wrong, but I tell you what, it's 1,000 times more rewarding. And I think that's what life's all about.
And you've mentioned it, you've said it a couple of times that I've been listening to you, the whole short and precious life. And I think it's all about not getting to the end of your life and regretting anything. So what does the short and precious, you keep mentioning it, so I thought I'm just going to ask you the question in terms of what does that mean to you? And I mean, you've obviously already made a huge legacy for yourself and what you're doing is changing lives, but it is short and precious, isn't it, life?
Yeah, and I love reading, and every now and again I'll come across a quote that really sort of takes the wind from my sails. So Mary Oliver, an American poet, and that's just a snippet from one of her poems where she talks about what is it you plan to do with your one wild, short and precious life. And, you know, sometimes when you read things like that, and that was really early on for me in this whole adventure, you know, so probably going back almost 12 years now, just literally took the wind out of my sails. Like, blimey, what am I actually going to do with this one wild, short, precious life? And actually, it is a one wild, short, and precious life. And we don't get a very long time to try and show up and make a difference and contribute. And that for me was just a wake-up call. It's a really beautiful wake-up call. So I come back to that quite a lot. I speak about that a lot because for me, we only get one shot, don't we? You know, and we can get stuck in that malaise, or we can do something about it, be courageous. And that begins today, not tomorrow. or next week, because who knows? You know, the great Stoics speak about that, memento mori, which translates as remember death. It sounds morbid, but it's not. It's actually reminding you that you could walk out the front door and get hit by a bus, right? It happens to people. So actually, let's make the most of this precious life. Let's not get bogged down in those trivial tripes and gripes that hang around forever. Let's get out there and actually smell the roses. Let's not waste another day on a hangover. I'm not doing that. That's never happening. I'm going to get out. I'm going to hug my daughters like it's the last time, and celebrate a sunrise and do the things that I think add value to my life and add the value to others. So that's sort of been a bit of a leading light to me. Get out there and make the most of it. And then to follow that through, Seneca, the great philosopher, again, he talks about meeting death with a firm step. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about no regrets. What he meant by that, and the great Stoics would talk about it, is live your life now, that if your last day came tomorrow, you could meet it with a firm step, knowing that you've been at, you've shown up, you've made the most of what you've got of this short and precious life. And I like that. That fuels me. And I'll continue to do it until the day I check out of my short and precious life. And I don't know what it's going to be. It could be another minute. It could be another 50. I don't know. So I'm going to, enjoy it the right way, meaningfully, as best I possibly can.
That's amazing. And I absolutely love that. And I wonder, I'm really hoping the person listening is just sort of blown away and inspired by this, because so many people don't even take that pause to think about such a question. It's for some people, that's a massive question, isn't it? And for others, to the point that life is they're malaising, as you say, it just doesn't even, it's not something they consider.
Yeah, and I think people don't pause enough. That's why I love self-development. I think it's so important, self-development. I think it gives you an opportunity to pause and reflect and think and try and answer some of those big questions, some of which are completely unanswerable, but really get into there and think, what is it? What is meaningful to me? What do I want to do with my one wild, short, precious life? And am I in a career that is filling me up and serving me? And I think somewhere in there's an opportunity to do things differently. Like, I am a good example of that. And what I mean by that is, for 8 of the last 12 years, I still had a busy full-time job as a broker. So I didn't burn my bridges. And when I had that epiphany sort of 10 years ago, that's it. I'm out. I'm off to find myself and live in the Himalayas. I actually stayed right bang slap in the middle of all the action and made sure, economically we were okay. I just started to live this beautiful life around the edges that was full of meaning and full of purpose, and figured out all the things I needed to figure out over time. And then when I was ready, stepped into that power and into that purpose and into that presence. So I think hopefully people listening, that's another important thing, right? It's not about that you have to figure this out and then, chop out your career and burn your bridges. It's like, just do the work. Start the work today. Start thinking about this stuff. Start reading around the subject. Start training around the subject. That's why I love training coaches, because effectively that's what we do. And that's what I did those 12 years ago. And then over time, you might figure this out. It might take you a year, it might take you 10, like me, but you'll get there. But you can only get there if you start.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make. They're like, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, it'd be perfect in 6 months. It'd be perfect when I retire. It'd be perfect. It's too late. Start now. And maybe listening to this podcast is the start of that, or the beautiful work that you're doing is the start of that. And I think that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And well said. And I think a lot of people sort of wait for your dry Januaries or your sober October, and they'll say, okay, I'll stop now. And there's never a good time. It's just, the time is now, right? That's what they say. So there's never a good time.
It's never a perfect time. And that's the thing. A lot of people look at their diary and go, I've got the 40th, I've got da-da-la-la-la.
Yeah.
Why not start now? What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Like, why wait for something that's going to give you your time back, your energy back, your mojo back, your looks back, your health back, your bounce back, your vitality back, your relationships back, your career back, your consistency back? Why are you waiting for that? What are you putting that off for?
Sold.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I mean, for me, that's been so inspiring, and I hope that has been for you listening. Well, Andy, we always end with, what does thriving alcohol-free mean to you? But obviously you've said loads already, but maybe in a little sentence, what does thriving alcohol-free mean to you?
I'll try and keep it really short. It is a superpower.
Yeah.
There you go. It is a super power. There's no better power on this planet if you've been a middle lane drinker than removing it.
Brilliant, brilliant. So any last words of wisdom that you want to leave the listener with?
No, and hopefully people are inspired by this, and hopefully they're inspired to just give it a go as well. You know, what have you got to lose? Nothing. Imagine if everything I've banged on about for the last half an hour or more is true for you. Wouldn't that be something? It's got to be worth a go, isn't it? It's got to be worth 28 days or 60 days or 90 days. And then if you get some of the results I mentioned, what a wonderful experiment. And you don't need me to tell you because you'll know yourself.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on, and thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate you and everything you do. And I can't wait to see what you do in the next 10 years. So really exciting.
And likewise, back at you. This is going to be a great adventure for us both over the next few years. And again, thank you for everything you're doing. It's really, really important work.
Thank you so much. Lovely to speak. Take care.
Bye.
Well, thank you, Andy. I absolutely loved that conversation. It was so inspiring and just, yeah, I mean, if you weren't inspired to take a break, then anyway, who knows? But I do think you might be listening to this episode for a reason. And as I said, as we're just going into dry January, that'll be starting very shortly. Why not take that break and see what happens? If you're feeling like you're he calls it a middle lane drinker, I call it a grey area drinker. You know, if you're feeling like it's time for you to take a break, and you've maybe had that nudge that he had as well, and that niggle that maybe alcohol is getting in the way, or the tug, then why not take a break and see what happens? And as Mary Oliver said, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild, short and precious life? And at least if you decide you don't want to take a break, just make sure that you pause and you ask yourself that question, because I think it's important that we do. And before setting those goals for the new year, if you haven't already, maybe think about that. What is it you want to do with that one wild, short, precious life? And what goals can you set in the short term that will start leading towards that? And it's all about taking that one step. It's taking that first step, whatever that step is that's in your heart that is saying to you, you need to do, take that first step. The next step will show you what that next step is. You'll then know what to do next. It's really having the courage to take the first step. So I really wish you well. I hope you enjoy New Year's Eve celebrations. And I hope that 2024 gives you everything that you are looking for. And so on that note, Happy New Year, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. Feel free to tag me on Instagram at Thrive Alcohol Free and follow me for daily tips. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions and have my signature Thrive Alcohol Free Society group coaching program. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. All the links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.